It's time, Fort Wayne. Your sports, your station. It's the Sports Rush with Brett Rump.
Max Landis.
Covering all the topics that hit a nerve here in the Summit City.
Clark goes 11 yards, touchdown.
Only on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Now here's your host, Brett Rump.
The greatest, most interesting, most important person of all time.
You are incredible!
Older than one.
Yeah, well, you're half right.
What is this, amateur hour?
This is going to be huge.
I believe this is going to be our finest hour.
Just when I think you said the stupidest thing ever, you keep talking.
I think that's the worst thing I've ever heard.
That boy ain't right.
The simplest way to put it, I have problems.
Welcome to the alleged show.
Y'all having a good time out there?
It is time to go home on a Monday. It is the Sports Rush, your daily local sports fix, 4 to 6. I am Brett Rump with Adam Lundy. If you're watching on Facebook, you can't see him, but trust me, he is here. DJ extraordinaire playing the tunes, hitting the buttons, and adding an insight or two along the way. It's another hour taking you home on this Monday with Don Fischer joining us coming up in about 12 minutes from now. A lot of action on our Facebook.com live stream. You can watch the show. You can comment there. Got another comment that said, would you agree the city sees PFW as a community college because they don't win big games or have yet to dance once? They actually have won big games. They've been the champion of the conference a couple of times over the last, 7 or 8 years, which there's a lot of teams that would love to have at least one championship over the last 8 years and haven't gotten them. They've always been competitive. They have won big. This year at home, they only lost one game. Actually ended up losing 2 when they lost their last home game. But they went most of the season with just one home loss. They were undefeated for up until the end of January at home. But they're saying when when the Mastodons beat IU back in 2016, there was a buzz in the city. The brand grew. But since, what has Purdue-Fort Wayne done to grow the brand? Well, number one, I think one thing that did affect that a little bit, and this is a matter of just personal opinion, is the fact that Purdue-Fort Wayne beat IU when they were still IPFW and they were in the transition, and at that time they were known as Fort Wayne. But then when Purdue became the primary on campus, then it became Purdue-Fort Wayne. And I think that's almost a whole rebranding in and of itself. But, everybody wants to feel like you got to dance to get the program to the next level. And I don't disagree with that. I think that ultimately the program is stuck a little bit until it takes that next level where everybody then realizes, hey, this team can actually play in the NCAA tournament. I don't think a lot of people understand that Purdue-Fort Wayne is on par with a lot of these really good mid-majors. Purdue plays High Point, okay? The Mastodons are in a conference that would be rated above High Point. But when you look at the Horizon League, here's some interesting facts. The great Greg Campy, who's been at Oakland for 41 seasons, I believe it is now. 41 years he's been in Oakland. Last year, they were the darlings of the NCAA tournament when they knocked off Kentucky and advanced to a second-round game against North Carolina State, which they almost won. Fell just short of the Wolfpack. But under the years that Coach Kaufman has been at Purdue-Fort Wayne, 11 seasons now, last year was the first time Oakland made it into the big dance. First time.
Yeah, under Coach Kaufman's tenure, it's the first time that Oakland's made it. Before that, it was 2011 when Kaufman was not coaching at Purdue-Fort Wayne. Yeah, right,
2011. But then, so since 2011, they've made it one time. That was last year.
Yep.
So they had, about a 13-season drought. And then you look at a team like Milwaukee, who's been a solid top-of-the-pack performer in the Horizon League the last few years. They were, this year, they were, second, third place, whatever they ended up in the standings. Milwaukee has not won the league and been in the NCAA tournament since 2014, again, before Coach Kaufman became the head coach.
Yeah, and they finished second in the Horizon League this season. So, yeah, good team.
Green Bay, the Phoenix, they made it in 2016. But along the way, they've had some miserable seasons. I mean, we're talking about 3-win, 4-win seasons along the path to where they've gotten today, which is pretty much right there at 3 wins, I think, this year.
Yeah, not a good year.
So Green Bay's made it, but yet they've also had those disasters of a season along the way, something the Mastodons have not had. 9 out of 10, other than COVID, 9 out of 10 years, Coach Kaufman's been the head coach. They've had winning years. And Youngstown State, their coach is now the coach at Utah State.
Yep.
And they're in the NCAA tournament, so he's there. But guess what? He didn't make it when he was at Youngstown State.
Never.
Youngstown State has never appeared in the NCAA tournament.
Nope. So, a lot of good teams.
260-447-8500. The Parkview Sports Medicine text line, 260-447-8500. And Ryan, don't downplay mid-majors, okay? Mid-majors are I mean, there's the high majors. Those are the big conferences. They've got tons of money, $bazillion bucks because of TV contracts. And then the mid-majors have almost no budget because they don't get to share in those big, fat TV contracts. That's the biggest difference you have. But the quality of basketball is not that big. Let's put it this way. The money is a greater disparity than the actual play on the court.
I'm going to throw in one more from the Horizon League. We saw the Robert Morris Colonials make it into the tournament this year after winning the Horizon League tournament. But it was a 10-year drought for them as well, with some very poor seasons in between. Their last time was in 2015.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, the last couple of seasons have ended with questions about Andrew Toole coming back, whether he was going to continue to be the coach. And they stuck with him, and look what happened. This year, it all came together, and they're going to be dancing. Who's Robert Morris? They play Alabama? Is that what I saw?
I got you here. I'll get you here.
Robert Morris plays Alabama, I'm almost sure.
Yes, it is a 2:15 between the Crimson Tide and the Colonials.
Is that a Thursday or Friday game? What was the time of that?
That is 12:40 on Friday.
Okay. That tells you what they think of Robert Morris. They don't realize Robert Morris is a team, not just a player.
Look out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bobby Moe is going to show up and just torch the entire Crimson Tide.
I don't know. We'll see.
Well, the Crimson Tide are playing without one of their best players.
Oh,
maybe the door's open.
Maybe.
For another Horizon League shocker. And you know the best part about that?
It'd be over SEC.
There's some money to share between all the Horizon League programs. If for each round you advance, you get a check for each round you play in, and that check primarily goes to the team that gets the job done.
Right.
But then there's a portion of it that gets shared among the other members of the conference. So
that's like how Notre Dame got all that college football playoff money and didn't have to share it.
It's kind of like being part of a class action suit. It's like
there you go.
There's a certain amount of money that gets distributed among the other members. You ever been a part of a class action suit and get a check for like 44 cents?
I can't say I have.
Yeah. We've got a multi-million-dollar class action settlement. You may be eligible. Just fill out the form. You fill it out, and a couple of months later, you get a check in the mail for 44 cents.
I love it.
260-447-8500, the Parkview Sports Medicine text line. Also find us on Facebook, facebook.com/1380 The Fan. Don't forget, coming up Thursday and Friday, we're going to be live on location at Winner's Circle out in New Haven. We are taking the show on the road. You can come out, hang with us, and watch the basketball games. All of them at one time on one wall. Plenty of flat screen TVs. Don't forget, you can put a little something on the game of your choice, and if you hit, you'll get paid right away, cash, on the spot. No waiting for any kind of transfers. They've got drink specials. They got food specials. It's going to be an awesome, awesome time this Thursday, Friday, 4 to 6 with the Sports Rush.
Can't wait to see you out there, just like we've been seeing a lot of people in Facebook and on our text line. Appreciate everybody tuning in.
Absolutely. What else did we... Oh, Purdue plays High Point.
Panthers.
The High Point Panthers.
Out of the Southland Conference.
And speaking of whiskers.
Oh, yeah.
we've got to, coming up, do we want to do it tomorrow?
Let's do it tomorrow.
Start tomorrow?
Yeah. Ahead
with
of
our listeners bracket?
Let's do that ahead of tomorrow, ahead of the first 4 games, yeah.
We didn't do too bad with our listeners bracket, and the surprising thing was Whiskers wasn't as bad as we thought he'd be.
No, it went surprisingly well.
He's been asking for 2 months about getting involved in this year's listeners bracket.
Oh, no, I know he's chomping at the bits. He texted in earlier saying he's got everything all planned out.
Boy.
Somebody else just texted in. It's kind of interesting. Alabama has 2 Horizon League opponents on both the men's and the women's side. On the women's side, it's number 5 Alabama versus number 12 Green Bay.
Oh, that'll be an interesting one, too.
Yeah.
Because that Green Bay team is very experienced. They play a tough schedule. And I thought that was the other team when I was talking about getting shafted. It wasn't in the men's bracket. It was actually Green Bay getting a 12 seed because there were some other teams that I thought were getting more favorable positions than Green Bay. And I thought Green Bay's won 22 straight games.
Oh, they're really good.
And look at their run. Look at their roster. If you actually did some research on the women's committee, you would have learned that Green Bay is probably one of the best, if not the best, mid-major you've got going out there. You can have a lot of hype with some other teams, but Green Bay is really dang good.
Yeah.
And the fact that Mastodons could play with them, beat them once, send them to overtime another time, and play with the lead all the way until the last 3 minutes of the third quarter. Now, the fourth quarter, yeah, we know it didn't go so well last week. They ended up losing in that championship to Green Bay. But that's a Green Bay team that's been there, done that. They've been through the experiences of playing in those kind of high-leverage games much more than the Mastodons. And you could say, well, the Mastodons have all this experience. And then you look at the roster of Green Bay, and you're like, dang. Because the Mastodons have 5 senior starters, and you look at Green Bay, and they've got 5 senior starters. Their senior starters have all played together. I mean, it's just crazy what they built there in Green Bay. Now, the question is going to be where they go from here.
Yeah, keep an eye on them, though, against Alabama in this upcoming tournament. That's on Saturday.
And meanwhile, the Purdue-Fort Wayne women are going to be playing in the WNIT again and got a bye in the first round.
Yeah.
I wonder, Coach Marcassano, we'll have to have her on the show this week.
We will.
But we're going to have to ask what she thinks about having the bye. Because you go from having a little over a week off like everybody does to all of a sudden now going almost 2 weeks between games because they will not play because they get a bye and the game they're going to play the winner of isn't until Saturday, which some of the games are Thursday, which means you could actually play your second game on Sunday and shorten up that break. But because their game that they have to wait and see who wins is not until Saturday, the earliest they could play is next Monday, probably more likely on Tuesday, and to allow for travel and everything and getting accommodations booked and all that.
Yeah.
But then you don't know if you're a home team. Right. How can they not tell them? They get the bye. How can you not say you get the bye and you'll be at home playing the winner?
You would feel like it would make sense.
That's right? Crushing as far as ticket sales.
That is huge.
But the Mastodons do not know if they're going to be at home or away. And what I'm being told by the university is that they will not know if they're home or away until that game's concluded. Now, my guess is because of the way the tournament format is set up and the way you pay to play is you probably in that first game probably have a team that will pay to have the next round home game and another team that won't. And so it depends who wins and how much they've bid on home games and stuff like that. It all comes down to money like it usually does now in college athletics. But that's sad. They should just say you get a bye and you get to host your first game. That's what they should do.
Yeah. To see an asterisk and saying second round bye teams are not guaranteed to host, it just throws everything into confusion. Yeah.
And now you've got to wait until that game gets over before you know if you'll be at home. And that means you shorten up the window to sell tickets.
Sure.
And probably will be left having to give tickets away to try to bring people out to the game on such a short notice. Yeah. And then it's going to be like a Tuesday night. It's not going to be a weekend game. But just mark your calendars next Monday and Tuesday, 24th, 25th. You'll want to kind of keep open and keep an eye on the results Saturday. What game is it they play the winner of?
They play the winner of Old Dominion and Navy, and they do play on Saturday at 2 o'clock is that game. So we'll find out the winner on Saturday.
Yep. And then here's what's fun about the women's bracket. We'll talk more about it coming up. But what's fun about the women's bracket is if the Mastodons get a win in that first game over Old Dominion or Navy, the next team that they could possibly face would be Butler.
I saw that. Yeah. So not only could they be possibly facing the Butler Bulldogs if they were to win that matchup.
Well, you're getting ahead of me.
I'm getting too ahead.
Butler is coached by Austin Parkinson, who used to coach at IUPUI, now IU Indy.
Right.
But Maria Marchesano, coach of the Mastodons, played at Butler. So a lot of storylines would be involved with that game. Then, if the Mastodons are able to beat Butler, then they go on in the next round, and it would be battle number 4 of the year between Purdue-Fort Wayne and Cleveland State. How that bracket worked out, that you put the 2 Horizon League teams on the same quadrant, beyond me. That's just the definition of stupidity is what it is.
I don't love it.
But you might have a path for the Mastodons that includes in-state rival Butler, where the Mastodons head coach went to school, followed by and is coached by a former Horizon League coach, followed by Cleveland State in what would be their 4th meeting of the year.
That would be crazy. Cleveland State will be facing the winner of Colgate and Coppin State, and then they'll go on to face the winner of Miami, Ohio, and Duquesne Longwood.
All right, we got to take a time out because Don Fischer standing by, the great, legendary, Hall of Fame voice of the Indiana Hoosiers. We've got some things to talk about with Don, including the Hoosiers failing to make the NCAA tournament. That comes up next here on the Sports Rush, 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Welcome back to the Sports Rush, your daily local sports fix, 4 to 6. I am Brett Rump along with Adam Lundy, and a big week of NCAA tournament basketball coming your way right here on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Of course, it all gets started tomorrow with the first 4 in Dayton. We'll have coverage right here on your Fort Wayne sports station. Also, coming up then Thursday, it's a day full of basketball. Not only will you hear the NCAA tournament coverage, but we will be live at Winter Circle out in New Haven doing the Sports Rush from 4 to 6. A chance for you to come and hang with us, watch the games Thursday and Friday coming up this week. Sports Rush on location at Winter Circle out in New Haven. But give us a text if you've got any questions, comments, or suggestions. 260-447-8500 on the Parkview Sports Medicine text line. That's 260-447-8500. Right now, it is that time. Yeah, even though the season ends, the voice of the Hoosiers does not. It is time to talk Indiana basketball with the legendary Hall of Famer, Don Fischer. It's our 15 Minutes with Fish, presented by Hoopy Insurance Services. Well, Don, I don't even know where to start with all the things that have happened with Indiana basketball since we last spoke. Of course, last week, it ended up being a week-long hiatus for the Sports Rush because of tournament basketball and different things on the Big Ten tournament on the schedule. But we got to start with what happened last night, and it did not go the way Indiana had hoped. The Indiana Hoosiers not in the field. Your thoughts on learning the news that the Indiana season has now officially ended?
Well, if you would have had me on last week, Brett,
what would you have said a week ago, Don?
Yeah, I know. I would have told you that if Indiana wanted to make the tournament, they had to win at least the first game that they played in the Big Ten tournament. And they did not. They got beat by Oregon, second time in 2 weeks or 10 days that they had played Oregon, and got beat in that contest significantly, 72-59. Not a very good performance by Indiana's basketball team. And I said last week to everybody that would listen, you better win your first game in the Big Ten tournament, especially if you're on the bubble team right now, which is what Indiana was going into that tournament. And so without that win, I thought Indiana left it up to the committee, and leaving it up to the committee is never a good thing. You've got to guarantee that you've got something that they can look at and say, you got to put this team in. And Indiana didn't have it again this year, just like last year. I mean, last year's record was 19-14, 10-10 in the Big Ten. This year's record ends up being 19-13, 10-10 in the Big Ten, and you get beat the first game of the Big Ten tournament, not the second.
Yeah, I'm with you, Don. If I was talking to you last week, I would have told you the same thing. I thought Indiana needed to get just one win out of the tournament because they needed to get that 20th win. At that point, then I felt like they were controlling their destiny instead of leaving it up to pure luck. Because once Indiana got beat, it was all about what everybody else did.
Exactly.
And what a committee thought. And Indiana didn't have anything really to prove or a leg to stand on that they deserved to be in that tournament. And so fate rears its ugly head, and here the Hoosiers are with a season that's complete. Mike Woodson's tenure is now over at Indiana. But let's go back to that game against Oregon, because Indiana's not going to win games if they've got a combination with Goody and Galloway, who I thought played so well in the stretch that Indiana seemed to perform better, and they combined to go, 6 for 23 from the field, and Goody was 0 for 4 on his 3-point tries.
Right.
You just got to have your players that you count on step up in those big moments, and unfortunately for Indiana, that wasn't the case against Oregon.
No, it was not. There were 3 players that scored in double figures in that game. Malik Renew was one of those with 19. He led Indiana. Galloway did have 15 points in the contest, but he knocked down just 6 of 18 shots, which is 33%, which is not good. And the team as a whole shot 34% in the first half, 39% in the second half. They ended up shooting 36% for the ball game. You're not going to beat a good basketball team shooting 36%. It just doesn't happen. And obviously in this particular case, Indiana didn't shoot the ball well, therefore they get beat. And the Oregon basketball team, which I think is a really good ball club, and Dana Altman's a great coach, there's no doubt about that, has been able to find ways to win when they're not playing their best, and they certainly played a lot better than Indiana did in this matchup against Oregon. So from my perspective alone, at this juncture, this season was going to come to an end. I pretty much predicted to anybody that wanted to ask me what I thought about the bubble and what Indiana's chances were getting into the tournament, and I said, having gotten beat by Oregon, I don't think they're going to get in, and they did not.
Let's talk about the NIT, because Indiana had opportunities to keep playing, and they respectfully declined the invitation. And I guess this has happened repeatedly for Indiana. And I don't know if it's an Indiana issue or if it is just the situation with Mike Woodson stepping aside. But does Indiana have kind of an inflated opinion of itself?
Well, I think people think that because of what happened with Archie Miller as well. Because they didn't take anything in the NIT after Archie got fired either. And obviously the 2 years that Mike Woodson came in, they did go to the NCAA. They got a little bit better in each of those years, but then things just slid away. And in my opinion, Indiana basketball expectations are always bigger than they probably should be, because our fan base has for years and years expected to win, expected to get to the NCAA tournament because it was like a given when Bob Knight was the head coach, even though they did go to the NIT 2 or 3 times in that era. So I do think Indiana fans' expectations get a little out of whack sometimes, and I understand that, especially in this day and age when you come up with a transfer portal group that comes in 6 strong and looks like it's got a 5 strong from the portal and a freshman that's supposed to be a top 5-star guy. When those kinds of players come to your program, the key there is, do they fit? And I would argue that necessarily was not the case this year, and maybe a little bit more so last year. But think about it. This is a basketball team that didn't look like they got any better 2 straight years, and they probably weren't great the first 2 under Mike Woodson if it hadn't been for Trace Jackson Davis and some guys that have been there for a while. All I can tell you is, and I'm not putting casting aspirations on what Mike Woodson did at IU All I know is that it wasn't a great deal better than what we saw previously, and we've had this kind of problem no matter who the coach has been for a long time now. Tom Crean had the toughest job of any coach in the country when he came here, taking a roster that had 2 walk-ons that were available and having to build it, and that was before the transfer portal.
And he did. He did.
Exactly. And you see, people can bellyache about Tom Crean and the fact that he didn't win big at Indiana. Well, he did win big a couple of times. He won a couple of Big Ten championships. They just didn't go farther than the Sweet 16 in any of Tom's years. But the fact of the matter is, this program's expectations have always been more so than what I think they should be. And they've got to get the right coach at this point, and I don't think that's happened.
So who is the next coach going to be?
Oh, good Lord. I have no idea. And the truth of the matter is, I don't want to know, because you put yourself in that position, you got everybody asking you questions, and now you've got to lie to people or not say anything. I have no idea who it's going to be. People ask me, well, who do you want? And I want to go, I really don't care as long as they make the right choice.
How far can they be in the process right now, though? I don't know what the protocols are. Do they?
I'll be honest with you, Brett. I don't think they can be that far along, other than knowing exactly who they want to put on a list.
Yeah.
From that standpoint, I don't think there's much question. Now, there are people out there that are done with their season that I think could be really good fits at Indiana. But whether or not they're looking at those people, I have no idea. And Scott Dolson's, or whoever the athletic director at Indiana has been, has never asked me for my opinion. Therefore, I don't give it.
Don, Terry Moore and the Indiana women didn't get any favors from the NCAA last night. They have to go play a very tough Utah squad, and if they win, their reward for victory is to play South Carolina at South Carolina. It's a tough path for Indiana.
There's no question about that. But you know what? They're in the NCAA tournament. I think this is the 6th straight year that they made it now. Terry Morin's done a remarkable job. And, of course, this season she had to kind of rebuild the program, so to speak, and that's always a process. And it takes time to get everybody involved. I think she had maybe 2 players off of last year's ball club that were factors during the season. And this year she had just those 2 and then building around those 2 players. So I think she's done a tremendous job. She continues to keep the light on at Simon Scott Assembly Hall in a positive way. And hopefully Indiana makes the right choice from a new coaching perspective here in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, that could happen here in the next couple of weeks too, but we'll just have to wait and see, because obviously I think they're still processing who is available and who might be the next guy at IU.
Are you a bracket guy?
I am not much of a bracket guy. At this point, I do know that the Big Ten's got 8 teams in the tournament. I've looked at the matchups in those cases. I think the Big Ten this year was a really good conference. I don't think it was a great conference, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think it was very good for the standpoint of parity, so to speak, and a lot of teams competing. I was shocked that Michigan State won it, because I thought they had, and Tom Izzo told me this in a conversation I had with him. He said, this Michigan State team is maybe one of the 4 or 5 least talented teams I've ever had, he says, but it's one of my top 5 in regard to how much I love coaching these guys, because they do what I ask them to do, and they play hard. And he said, you can't ask for more than that.
Yeah, good lesson to Indiana, that sometimes you don't have to have the most talent. You just got to have guys that are willing to play hard and do what the coach asks. So
exactly.
Hey, Don, we appreciate it. Are we talking? We got another week left with you?
Yeah, we got 2 weeks left.
Oh, 2 weeks
if
left.
If you don't want to talk to me the last week, that's up to you.
No, there's always like baseball and softball or something. But no, we always appreciate you. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you next week.
We'll see you, man.
Yep.
See you.
Don Fischer joining us here on the Sports Rush. And, of course, our 15 Minutes with Fish, always presented by Hoopy Insurance Services. Go ahead and see an independent agent. Find somebody that's going to be able to get quotes from multiple insurance companies, kind of weigh the benefits, the factors, and the cost, and find a policy that is exactly right for you. That's what you get with Hoopy, H-U-P-E, Insurance Services. We're going to take a time out. We're going to come back. Plenty more on this Monday edition of the Sports Rush on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Welcome back to the Sports Rush, your daily local sports fix 4 to 6. I am Brett Rump along with Adam Lundy. We've got you connected on the Parkview Sports Medicine text line 260-447-8500. It's been a busy Monday after being away for a week and a half. So many things to catch up on. Of course, the NCAA tournament, one of the big stories right now, the field announced for both the men and women last night. Talked a little bit about the men's tournament. On the women's side, Indiana, who we just talked to Don Fischer about this, did not get a great draw. I think it's going to be a real challenge for Indiana to make it through the first weekend because they're going to have to play Utah to open up, and that's an 8-9 matchup. And then if victorious, Indiana moves into a second-round game against South Carolina in Columbia, South Carolina. Good luck with that. Of course, they're still playing campus sites on the women's side. So the top 4 seeds in each region are the hosts for a 4-team pod. But Green Bay, they're also in that same bracket. They're taking on Alabama. So the Green Bay Phoenix will take on Alabama. And here's what's kind of interesting. If Green Bay is able to knock off Alabama and win that game, they'll advance to the next round where they will potentially play Maryland. Now, of course, Purdue-Fort Wayne is coached by their former star player, Shayla Sellers. Mm-hmm. And Maryland has Cheyenne Sellers, Shayla's younger sister, who is kind of their star player. So you could have another Sellers getting a shot at Green Bay in the second round of the women's tournament. Notre Dame, meanwhile, they ended up with a 3 seed. I thought for sure they were at least a 2.
Yeah, I don't know about that one either, man. They're a really good team.
Your 2 seeds ended up going to TCU, UConn, North Carolina State. That's the one that I thought slipped away, but I think North Carolina State beat Notre Dame.
They did.
Late in the year, and I think that might have been the difference of how they got in as a 2 seed.
Yeah.
And Duke. And I think Duke might have knocked off Notre Dame.
They did, March 8th in the ACC tournament.
So Notre Dame, basically by falling to a couple of other teams that are in that 2-3 range, ended up dropping to the 3. They will take on Stephen F. Austin. Is that who it is?
Yeah.
And then the other side of the bracket features Michigan. And they'll take on Michigan will be taking on the winner of a play-in game between Iowa State and Princeton. Indiana, man,
that's tough.
That's tough, man. You kick the men out of the tournament, and then you put the women in Columbia, South Carolina, where they might have to take on the Gamecocks.
Yeah, good luck to the Indiana Hoosier women.
Somebody had it out for the Hoosiers.
Birmingham.
Also, in case you missed it earlier, Purdue-Fort Wayne women are going to be part of the WNIT field. Last year, they made it to the final 16. Mm-hmm. And this year, they've already made it to, the final 24? What is it?
Might be 32, 24.
How many teams are still left when they play?
I'll figure
because
it
they
out.
got to bye. So they don't even have to play the first round game they had to play a year ago. They will get the winner of Old Dominion and Navy, which will be played at Old Dominion coming up Saturday afternoon. And that will be at a time and place still to be determined.
It is a round of 32 that they did make it to. There's going to be 16 matchups in the second round.
So 1 win, and they'll be back into the round of 6. Last year in this same tournament, the WNIT, they lost by 4 to St. Louis.
Yeah.
St. Louis went on to win the whole darn thing.
Yep, lost to the eventual champions.
Not bad.
Not bad at all, man.
260-447-8500, the Parkview Sports Medicine text line. We covered about a third of the topics that we thought we were going to cover. How did we not even talk about the Indianapolis Colts today? Well, we've got something on tap for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of talk with the Colts. Chris Ballard, he's doing some work.
He is, actually.
Signing some free agents. A couple of guys that are going to be starters.
I saw the over-under for Chris Ballard moves in the offseason was only set to 0.5, so he's definitely hit the over.
0.5?
Yeah.
For moves in the off. Oh, man. If he did that, we would be in big trouble.
Yeah, big trouble. So he hit the over there.
But it looked like the focus clearly on the secondary. In fact, I think today they signed another corner.
Yeah, gotta shore that up for sure.
So they've added a couple of corners, a safety, and of course they finally found their quarterback, the one that's going to provide some competition to Anthony Richardson. Yeah. Do two bad quarterbacks added together make a good quarterback? Because that's what the Colts have. They have a marginal quarterback and a less than marginal quarterback that they hope can be above marginal and maybe even potentially at someday a star. That's what the Colts roster has right now.
Yeah, it's like, you know what they say, if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have any. But so if you have two half quarterbacks, you might have one.
And it was one of those things where Chris Ballard, he kind of stepped in it when he said they were going to bring in a quarterback to provide competition. They want Anthony Richardson to start, so they don't want the competition to be a guy that has more experience and is capable of beating Anthony Richardson out. So they get a guy that can push him but not beat him. That's exactly what they had to go find. And I guess in some ways that's what they got.
Yeah, people are kind of unhappy with the amount of money that he's getting, but in today's day and age, it's kind of just the price that they're commanding, it, especially at the time when they signed him.
But there were some guys that got signed for like $7 million, and the Colts paid double that to get Daniel Jones.
Yeah, and I don't think he's going to be seeing much time on the field unless he just completely blows Anthony Richardson out of the water. But it's just stupid. It's just babysitting two quarterbacks now. I don't know what we're doing.
Coming up Thursday and Friday on the road at Winner's Circle. Make plans to be with the Sports Rush live this Thursday and Friday. Winner's Circle in New Haven. Hey, also make your plans to get to Cruzy Automotive Service before you get spring break catching up on you. One of the things you have to do with your car when you get to this time of year is make sure all that winter gunk it hasn't messed up anything in your engine, and everything's still good with your seals, your gaskets, your hoses, your belts. And so Cruzy Automotive Service has the spring break checkup where they'll go through your car, make sure everything's ready to go for those road trips so you don't have any kind of surprises, including getting your oil change. Right now, a special price available at Cruzy Automotive Service of under $20. That's right. You can get an oil change for as low as $19.95. You can get all the details by getting a hold of Cruzy Automotive Service. You can go where I go, Cruzy Automotive Service. They've been in business for over 40 years on Lima Road, north of Wallen, south of Till, right behind the Shell gas station. Call and get your appointment, 489-1089. That's 489-1089 for Cruzy Automotive Service. Do you think today was good enough to let us come back tomorrow?
Oh, I think so.
Well, because, last week and a half ago, they told us that it wasn't good enough to earn the week of the Big Ten tournament. They were going to air games like Northwestern Minnesota above us. So, no, I'm kidding. We'll be back tomorrow 4 to 6 as we count down to the NCAA tournament. Of course, the first four get started tomorrow. We're going to be ready for the games on Thursday at Winner's Circle in New Haven, and we hope you join us. Got to always thank our great guests on Mondays, Don Fischer, our 15 Minutes with Fish, presented as always by Hoopy Insurance Services. Hope you're going to have a very enjoyable Monday night. We are going to be back tomorrow from 4 to 6, so plan on joining us then for a Tuesday edition of the Sports Rush.
Listener bracket.
We will be working on that listener bracket coming up tomorrow. Yeah, we've got Whiskers all lined up, excited, and ready to go. So join us tomorrow for another edition of the Sports Rush on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM.